years ago, I was screaming of pain in an emergency room. The first few doses of morphine hadn't made a dent, and my blood pressure was crashing fast, so doctors rushed me into an operating room. After finally giving me enough medication to dull the pain, the surgeon introduced himself and asked me if I understood what was about to happen. Since all they knew at this point was that liquid was rapidly filling up my abdominal cavity, he started enumerating the risks, like that I might lose a lot of blood, or worse, when I cut him off and said, "Yes, I know, and I might die. Just do what you have to do." I was 21 years old and brushing shoulders with death. One morning, at the young age of 6, a crippling pain took over. What I now know was juvenile idiopathic arthritis. I was in so much pain. I was a tough kid, but even the lightest of bedsheets over my legs was enough to make me cry. I would struggle just to sit up in bed every morning and would watch the bathroom door stretch further and further away from me. The hallway seemed to go on for miles. Anxiety would creep in as tears streamed down my face, and I wondered how I was going to make it all the way over there today, let alone outside. The pain put me in a wheelchair within a year, where I remained for 7 more. For years, I felt like a prisoner of my own pain. I quickly forgot what it was like not to have to claw through that fog of pain just to accomplish simple daily tasks. I was even afraid of moving because the consequences seemed enormous. What if I drop this book? I can't bend down, and if I do, I won't be able to get up. I'll be stuck here on this floor in pain until one of my parents finds me. It will worry them. Fear followed me everywhere, and I felt completely powerless. I watched it take a toll on my parents. Hurting them was the worst part. They both loved me so much, but no matter what they did, they couldn't take my pain away. Ice packs, heating pads, warm baths, more pillows, new diet, acupuncture, every pill on the planet, nothing worked. They fought all the time, even in the hospital waiting room. Our family fell apart, and I felt like it was my fault. I felt even guiltier that I couldn't protect my little sister from it all. I wanted to relieve that suffering, but I had no idea how. In the meantime, I got involved in school projects, whatever could get my mind off my life and focused on others. I dreamt of the day that I could put one foot in front of the other without shooting pain. Then, I turned 14, and doctors found a new medication that got me walking again. But it came with the potentially dangerous side effect of suppressing my body's defenses. Since my arthritis was the result of an overactive immune system attacking my own joints, suppressing it across the board meant that I could have trouble fighting off viruses, infections, or any other intruders. Those first few steps were incredible. I remember feeling as though I was walking on clouds. I even karate kicked my sister for the first time, something I'd wanted to do for years. I had no idea how long this window of opportunity would last, so I wanted to do as much as I could, knowing I could relapse at any moment. I ran for school president, fundraised for earthquake survivors in Haiti, went to Europe with my high school chamber orchestra, and worked with disability organizations. Still in relatively good health, I joined a college trip to Nicaragua to experience the world from a different perspective. I had no idea this trip would change my life. While visiting a small village, I met a 4-year-old little boy named Diego. I happened to be placed in his grandmother's home, a strong member of the Women's Coffee Cooperative we were there to help. From my experience working with kids with special needs, I noticed that Diego had cerebral palsy and was unable to walk or sit up on his own. His big smile and childish giggle made my heart melt. I quickly grew to love him. I could feel the family's love for Diego, but it pained me to realize that he spent every day lying in bed, not playing, not learning, his potential stifled. People in Diego's village were struggling just to survive, and I understood that no one really had time for a little boy with a disability who they thought would never contribute to the community. That week, I would knock on his mother's door every morning and sheepishly ask if I could play with Diego. She would quietly nod and let me in. I could feel her watching us as we colored, and I read him stories in broken Spanish. I wasn't sure if she wanted me there, and I started to seriously worry about coming off as an arrogant Westerner. On our last day, the whole village gathered at the top of a hill to say their goodbyes as we boarded the bus. My heart sank as I looked around and realized that Diego and his mom were nowhere to be found. Of course, she's busy, I told myself, and tried to put on a smile. Heading to the bus, I turned around one last time and saw a figure in the distance. I realized it was Diego's mom, with him in her arms, trudging up the hill. As she got closer, I could see that tears were streaming down her face. We both burst into loud sobs as she ran up to me and hugged me tight, Diego still in her arms and nestled between us. Her gratitude overwhelmed me. It stretched far beyond the language barrier. I instantly realized that my admiration for her was reciprocated and that my time with Diego had been truly meaningful. On the bus back, I wailed, the only time I've ever cried that hard in public. Then I got really angry. Why was it that because of where he was born, Diego would only have a fraction of the opportunities I had? There he would be, lying in his bed for the rest of his life, staring up at his tin roof instead of discovering the world right outside. Why did I get to leave my prison, but he can't? My own suffering and powerlessness came crashing back, except this time, maybe I could do something. I could help Diego's family see the beauty in his condition. I would find him a way to get the right kind of adapted equipment he needed to reach for the stars. I started sketching the equipment he needed and making rough calculations about how much it would cost. I thought of things like the kind of wheels he would need for the rough countryside terrain. I scheduled an appointment with the Canadian NGO worker coordinating our group in Managua, the capital, and I couldn't wait to tell her my plans. The meeting did not go well. She spent almost an hour telling me why having been in Diego's life for 1 week was enough, that I shouldn't take on more and end up disappointing him, his family, and myself. I started to cry, what she probably thought were tears of guilt, but they were really tears of fury and frustration. Why couldn't she understand? No, I was not going to just turn my back on Diego. He needed a wheelchair, and I was going to get it for him. End of story. Later that night, my teachers and the other NGO workers said, "Simone, she doesn't know you like we do. Just do what feels right." So, fueled by fury, and with Diego's family's permission, I spent the next year fundraising to get him a wheelchair set for his environment, special walker, and adapted toys, and convinced an incredible volunteer occupational therapist to come back to Nicaragua with me. It was exhilarating to see the immense impact we had on Diego's quality of life. His motivation and motor skills went through the roof. What I really didn't expect was the even greater impact we had on his family and community. The one kid they thought there was no hope for was now the coolest kid in town. And with the walker, he was even able to walk for the first time. I felt deeply fulfilled by this experience and decided to dedicate my career to alleviating suffering. I'm now in my final year of law, majoring in international human rights and development. But there I was, 2 years ago, heading into emergency surgery. A rare infection had been aggressively poisoning my body for months, and now it had ripped through an organ. This was it, rock bottom. I was resentful of fate. I was resentful of all the people who never had to experience what it's like to have a broken body. I was supposed to be an adult now, but I felt even more helpless than I had been as a child. Entering the operating room, it was like being sucked back into every single moment of suffering and utter powerlessness I had ever experienced. Luckily, the operation was successful. All I remember is waking up in the ICU holding my dad's hand. But instead of feeling grateful, and despite all the morphine, I burst into deep, painful whimpers. "Daddy, it's not fair." I kept repeating it. "Why does this keep happening to me?" "I know, sweetie," he said. All he could do was hold me like a child. I was sad, I was bitter, I was angry. But with each passing day, my resentment led to reflection. What was I doing here? Why was this really happening to me? Lying in the hospital, I remembered my painful million-mile marathons just to get to the bathroom, and then remembered seeing Diego lying in his bed. But he wasn't in that bed anymore. He was up and about in his wheelchair and walker, playing with his friends, and I was going to be okay too. I thought about all the other kids still lying in their beds. Who's speaking up for them? What if I could speak up for them? I recovered and decided to start a nonprofit organization that provides adapted equipment and access to medical services for children with special needs in developing countries. I dream of a world where all kids with special needs, no matter where they're born, could be allowed to reach their full potential and feel valued. My team and I are determined to make that dream a reality. We recently returned to Nicaragua, my first time as director of the organization. We had enough resources to sustainably support 5 children, so we informed a local rural area clinic that we were there to help a couple kids who need it most. The next day, they presented us to over a dozen families waiting for us in the sweltering sun. I was devastated as I looked around at all the nervous faces because we couldn't help everyone this time. It was heart-wrenching to have to turn away some of the kids, even temporarily, but I would never make a promise I can't keep. It struck me that these were only a few of the children in a small part of one country who needed our help. Clearly, the demand for what we do is profound, but we're determined to give every kid a shot at a beautiful life. Looking back, I can see that my life has been a journey of constant learning. I learned that at any age, you can lose anything: your family, your health, even your life. I learned that everyone has less than some and more than others. And I learned that every challenge brings with it a new opportunity. The reality of my condition is that I could relapse at any time, so I'm grateful for every single moment I get. I'm beginning to understand that my experience with suffering has been pointing me towards the path I needed to take. It's given me a unique sense of empathy and depth of insight into the struggles of others that are often overlooked. I've gained the power to convey hope that suffering can be transformed and that every life has potential. And I'm determined to help as many children reach that potential while I can. Thank you.